Tonight, let the day loosen its grip on your shoulders. If you can, dim the lights just a little. Let your jaw unclench. Let your hands rest in a way that feels unforced, as if they've been waiting all day for permission to soften. With each quiet breath, imagine you are closing a gentle door behind you. Nothing dramatic, nothing slammed. Just a calm click that says, the outside world can wait. And before we drift anywhere at all, there's a small, friendly question to set the mood, like choosing which window to open in a warm room. Do you prefer to hear a story that begins with the sound of water, the wind, or the flickering of an oil lamp? In a moment, we will walk into an ancient place where all three exist at once. Water murmuring beneath stone, wind moving across flat land, and a lamp holding a little island of gold in the dark. We won't hurry, we won't chase theories, we will simply follow what the old clay records say, letting their calm weight steady the mind. Here, no one rests alone. Every story from the past is a soft lantern in the dark, gently lighting our way tonight. Before we drift deeper into tonight's gentle journey, remember to subscribe to Ancient Sleep Story. Here, you'll always find peaceful stories that soothe the heart and quiet the mind. Where are you listening from tonight? Leave a comment. Your presence adds warmth to this quiet corner of the night. Now, picture a room that is cool even in summer. The walls are thick, built of sun-dried brick. The floor is packed earth, smooth from years of careful steps. Along one side, shelves hold small bundles, jars, and boxes, ordinary shapes that become precious when you realize how long they have waited. Near the center sits a low table. On it, a shallow bowl of oil, a wick, a flame no bigger than a fingernail. The lamp does not brighten the whole room. It simply makes a circle of light, and inside that circle, the world becomes slow and close. In the lamplight, you can see dust, tiny drifting grains that float down as gently as sleep. And there is a sound, barely there, like a distant hush, the scratch of reed against clay. A scribe is at work, not a king, not a warrior, not a hero meant for shouting, just a careful person with steady hands, shaping symbols into a soft tablet while the clay is still damp. Each line is pressed with patience. Each mark is a little decision, this angle, this curve, this pause. The scribe is doing something tender, turning time into touch. This is where tonight's story begins, in the quiet labor of record keeping. Because among the oldest surviving lists of rulers, among the earliest political memories we can hold in our modern hands, there is a sentence that feels less like history and more like a lullaby of wonder. It does not say people chose a leader. It does not say a strong man took power. It says something softer, stranger, and somehow more grounding. It says that kingship was lowered, not built, not invented, not argued into existence, lowered as if it were an object carried carefully from above and placed down with intention. The old texts repeat that image again and again, and even now, thousands of years later, you can feel the physicality of it, the slow descent, the careful setting, the moment something heavy becomes still. Let that word settle for a breath. Lowered. In the world of ancient Sumer, kingship was not only a job title. It was an idea with weight, a structure, a pattern of order. And the pattern, they said, arrived already shaped. The first place it touched the earth was a city called Eridu. Eridu lies in the southern reaches of Mesopotamia, where the land is low and wide and the horizon feels endless. Even if you have never been there, you can imagine its atmosphere: pale sunlight on reeds, slow water moving through channels, birds calling from a distance as if they are speaking in the language of time. In the evenings, the air cools quickly, and the scent of damp earth rises like a memory. The Sumerians imagined something else beneath this city, something even calmer than the surface world. The Abzu, an underground ocean of sweet water, hidden and steady, the deep reservoir that nourishes everything living. If you listen closely in your mind, the Abzu sounds like a soft, constant white noise, a gentle underwater hush that asks nothing from you. And above that imagined water, Eridu's temple stood, Abzu, House of the Abzu. Picture it in the lamplight of your thoughts. Steps worn smooth, walls textured with clay and reed, a threshold you cross slowly, as if you are entering not a building, but a mood. In the Sumerian view, this was not just a sacred place. It was a meeting point where divine order and human life could touch without friction. So when the clay records say that kingship was first in Eridu, they are not only pointing to a dot on a map, they are pointing to a feeling, the first rule of the world arriving in the softest, most life-giving place they could imagine. And then the list begins. Names like small stones laid in a line, Alulim, Alalgar, each name is followed by a number so large that the mind, if it's in a hurry, might try to wrestle it into logic. But tonight, we don't need to wrestle. We can let the numbers be what they were for the scribes, a way of describing a different kind of time, tens of thousands of years, not as a boast, not as a shock, but as a signal. This is not ordinary chronology. This is the deep time of mythic memory, the kind of time that moves the way dreams move, smoothly, without edges, without the strict ticking you feel when you stare at a clock. Imagine the scribe pausing after pressing such a number into clay. Imagine the reed lifting, the hand hovering, and the lamp flame bending slightly as if it too is listening. The room stays quiet. Outside, the wind passes through the reeds. Somewhere far away, water moves under the earth. It is possible that the ancient people knew these rains were not like ours. Some scribes later on would leave little notes, phrases that mean something like days without measure, as if to say, do not count this the way you count your worries. Let it be a different order of time. And perhaps that is the first gift of this story for a modern listener, because if your day has been full of measurements, emails, schedules, numbers, expectations, then you can step into this older kind of time for a while, a time that does not demand productivity, a time that does not rush you, a time that simply holds you. The King List says that before a great turning in the world, kingship moved through 5 cities. Each city was like a quiet station in a night journey. Eridu, then other names that feel like wind over dry land, Bad Tibira, Larak, Sippar, Shurapak. You don't need to memorize them. You can let them pass slowly, like lanterns seen from a train window. In each place, the idea is the same. Order is being kept, not through noise, not through conflict, through presence, through the steady continuation of a pattern. And then later in the list, there is a simple line, a small sentence with an ocean behind it. Then the flood swept over. We won't linger on images that jar the heart. Tonight, let it be only what it is in the text, a boundary, a doorway between 2 kinds of time, a deep breath between one chapter and the next. For now, in this first part of our journey, we remain in the room with the lamp. We stay with the scribe and the clay. We stay with the gentle idea that authority, in the oldest imagination we can still read, was not seized, but placed. As you rest here, let your forehead smooth, let your breathing slow. If you'd like, inhale for 4, hold for 2, exhale for 6, as if you were blowing gently on the lamp flame, watching it steady without going out and letting your thoughts soften too. You don't need to solve anything tonight. You don't need to decide what is literal and what is symbolic. You can simply be near the story the way you are near a river at night, listening, feeling, letting the sound do its quiet work. And in a moment, when you are ready, we will step closer to Eridu itself, to its reed beds and moonlit water, to the hush of the Abzu beneath, and to the soft discovery of what it might mean, even now, to set something down. Let us leave the archive for a while, but keep the lamp's warmth in our pocket like a small secret. Imagine the doorway opening soundlessly and the night air meeting your face, cool and scented with river mud and reeds. The sky above Mesopotamia is wide enough to calm the mind by itself. Stars feel closer here, not because they have moved, but because nothing tall competes with them. You are walking slowly now, as if your feet already know that this is a story meant for resting. With each step, your shoulders soften again. With each breath, the day behind you becomes less interesting, less urgent, less loud. Ahead, the land is low and patient. Water has shaped it for so long that the ground seems to remember every bend of every channel. In places, the river divides into smaller paths, and those paths divide again, and each ribbon of water carries moonlight like a quiet offering. You can hear it, soft movement, small eddies, the occasional splash of something living and unseen. If you like, let that sound become your background, a gentle, continuous hush, like the world humming itself to sleep. Eridu appears not as a skyline but as a presence, a gathering of walls and courtyards and low roofs, all made from the same earth the river delivers. The city does not stand against nature, it blends into it. Even in imagination you can feel the softness of its edges. There is a path that leads toward the temple precinct. It is not a grand road, not a dramatic approach. It is simply the way many feet have walked day after day until the ground grew smooth and certain. Your steps are quiet here. The air carries a faint smell of oil smoke from lamps, and somewhere a dog shifts in its sleep. From a distance, a single reed flute might be practicing a note, then letting it drift away. The temple of Eridu Abzu rises like a calm thought. In the daytime, it might look sun-baked and pale, but tonight it is mostly shadow with a few warm points of light, lamps at a doorway, a glow behind woven screens, a flicker that turns stone and brick into something almost alive. Abzu means house of the Abzu, and the Abzu is the deep, sweet water beneath the earth. Not salt sea, not stormy, but fresh, hidden, enduring. The Sumerians imagined it as an underground ocean feeding springs and rivers, sustaining fields, holding life steady when the surface world became uncertain. If you have ever lain awake at night and wished for something reliable, something that keeps flowing even when you can't, then you already understand the comfort of the Abzu. Stand still for a moment and imagine the ground beneath your feet. Beneath the packed earth and bricks, beneath layers of silt and older riverbeds, there is water moving in darkness. Not fast, not anxious, just moving as water does because that is its nature. Let that steadiness teach your breathing in and out. Slow and even, now we enter. Inside the temple precinct, the world becomes quieter, as if sound itself respects boundaries. The courtyard stones are cool, the walls hold the night. Lamps burn with a steady patience, their light soft and amber, never harsh. Shadows move gently when someone passes, then settle again. You notice details that busy minds usually miss. The texture of clay plaster under your fingertips, the faint line where a repaired crack runs like a healed scar, the soft scrape of sandals, the way a curtain lifts and falls with the breeze as if it is breathing. Somewhere within this precinct, in a side room that smells of dried reeds and warm oil, is the archive. This is the room we visited before, the place where memory is stored in objects you can hold. It is easy to imagine an archive as cold or severe, but this one feels intimate. Clay tablets sit in baskets, larger prisms rest wrapped in cloth. Labels are simple. There is no urgency. The urgency belongs to those who forget. Here, the work is the opposite, to remember slowly. The scribe is here again, not as a character who demands attention, but as a steady companion. You can picture the posture, the slight bend of the neck, the patience in the wrists, the calm acceptance that learning takes time. The reed stylus taps lightly at first, then presses, then lifts. A rhythm forms, tap, press, lift, like a tiny metronome for the mind. If you are listening tonight from a busy place, an apartment with traffic outside, a house where tomorrow's to-do list waits, then let this rhythm replace those sounds. Tap, press, lift, tap, press, lift. On one shelf, among the tablets, there is an object that draws the eye because it feels both ordinary and immense. A clay prism, small enough to be carried, heavy enough to feel serious in the hands. Its faces are covered with lines of wedge-shaped marks, neat and repeating. It looks like a simple thing, yet it holds a whole architecture of thought. And this is where the story begins to do what it does best, to turn abstraction into touch. Because kingship is not a stone you can pick up. It is not a bird you can watch. It is an invisible agreement, a pattern of trust, a structure people live inside. But the Sumerian imagination made it tangible. Kingship, they said, was lowered, and in this room, surrounded by clay, that idea feels almost literal. Imagine something being lowered slowly, carefully, as if carried by many unseen hands. Imagine it descending through the night air, passing through layers of cloud, then through the calm of starlight, then into the warm circle of an oil lamp. Imagine it arriving not with a crash, but with a soft, certain placement. What happens inside you when you picture that? For some people, it brings relief. Because if order is something placed, then maybe you are not required to manufacture it from pure exhaustion. Maybe you can receive it. Maybe you can participate in it gently. For others, it brings wonder, because it suggests that life has patterns older than our arguments, older than our personal worries, patterns that come and go like seasons, and yet return. Tonight, we don't need to choose an interpretation. We can simply feel the grounding of the image, something heavy being set down. The King List continues in the scribe's careful lines, names, numbers, cities. It is not written as a drama. It is written like a river log, steady, repetitive, reassuring. This king, this long reign. Then the next. Then the next. The mind begins to relax because it senses a rhythm it can trust. And the cities themselves, when you imagine them, feel like stops on a moonlit walk. Eridu, near the deep, sweet water. Bad Tibira, where the air might smell of metal and earth, but at night everything quiets and cools. Larak, small and still, like a word whispered. Sippar, touched by sunlight in the day, but tonight only a soft outline under the stars. Shurapak, near water again, the place where the list feels close to a turning, as if the wind changes direction. You can let each name be a small breath. Inhale with Eridu. Exhale with Bad Tibira. Inhale with Larak. Exhale with Sippar. Inhale with Shurapak, and let your shoulders drop a little more. What the list is doing, in its gentle way, is building a bridge between worlds. The world of human settlements and the world of cosmic meaning. It says, here are the places where people lived. And also here is the strange, mythic time. where years stretch like quiet cloth. If you notice your thoughts trying to solve the numbers, let them go kindly. This is not a math problem, it is a lullaby of scale. It is the ancient mind's way of saying, before the great change, time felt different. And you, listening now, can borrow that feeling, because there are nights when the best gift is permission to step out of measured time, to let the minutes stop insisting on being counted, to let sleep arrive in its own unhurried way. In this room, the lamp flame leans and straightens. Dust floats down. The Abzu murmurs beneath the city, imagined but comforting, like a heartbeat below the floor. And at the edge of the tablet, the scribe leaves space for what comes next. Space for the quiet boundary line that will one day be written, the one that says the world turned, but not yet. For now, we stay in the soft beginning. We stay in Eridu's calm. We stay in the presence of water beneath stone and the steady human hand that records without rushing. And as the night deepens, we will begin to follow the list itself, step by step, name by name, letting the journey carry us forward as gently as a river carries moonlight. We return to the small room of clay and lamplight, but now the air feels even softer, as if the night has learned your breathing. The flame in the oil lamp is steady, and its glow gathers on the tablet like warm honey. The scribe's reed rests for a moment, then begins again. Quiet, careful, unhurried. Tap, press, lift. If you notice your thoughts drifting, that is perfectly fine. Let them drift the way dust drifts in the light, slow and harmless. You don't have to hold on to every sentence. You can simply let the story pass through you, the way water passes through reeds. On the tablet, the list continues, and with it, the gentle journey begins. Not a journey of danger, but of names and places, the kind of travel that happens in the mind when the body is safe and still. Eridu was first, we said, a city of low walls and deep imagined water beneath. And now, in the scribe's lines, kingship moves on. It is almost like watching a small lantern carried across a dark plain. The next city is Bad Tibira. Picture the path between them, a ribbon of packed earth beside a canal, the surface of the water dark as ink. Moonlight lies on it in broken pieces, trembling when the breeze touches. In the distance, the land is flat enough that you can see the sky meeting the earth, and that line is so calm it feels like a lullaby for the eyes. Bad Tibira is often remembered for craft and work, metal, tools, the patient shaping of useful things. But at night, even work becomes quiet. The heat leaves the bricks, the tools rest. A door closes, someone pours water into a bowl, a child exhales in sleep. The city settles into the same silence that settles over every human place when the lamps grow few. And in that hush, the list offers its numbers, not as a challenge, but as a chant. 28,800, 36,000, 43,200. Let the numbers be slow and rounded like stones in a riverbed. If you like, you can hear them without needing to understand them. You can let them move through you like a low hum, the way distant thunder can soothe when it is far enough away. Inhale and let a number rise. Exhale and let it fade. The scribe's fingers are slightly stained with clay, the way a gardener's hands hold the color of soil. A small bowl of water sits nearby, and when the reed stylus grows dry, it is dipped and lifted again, a tiny bead clinging to its tip. The tablet is cool and damp, like riverbank mud shaped into a promise. Each wedge mark is pressed with soft confidence, firm enough to last, gentle enough to feel kind. If you could lean closer, you might smell it: wet earth, warm oil smoke, reeds drying in the corner. Old, quiet scents, the kind that belong to slow work. And as the list is written, you begin to notice something comforting about repetition. A city name, a king's name, a reign length. Then again, another city, another name, another span of time. The mind starts to treat them like prayer beads, not to prove anything, but to settle. You may even imagine kingship itself, this invisible pattern, being carried like a wrapped bundle from one place to the next, not hurried, not fought over, simply escorted as if order were a lamp flame guarded from the wind by cupped hands. Let your own hands relax as you picture that. Let your palms open, your fingers loose. If your tongue is pressed against the roof of your mouth, let it rest. If your eyebrows are holding a question, let them smooth. Somewhere beyond the temple walls, the city sleeps. Outside the city, fields lie dark and flat, and irrigation channels thread through them like quiet veins. A few date palms stand in silhouette, still as patient elders. Over everything, the night sky drapes itself, wide, indifferent to urgency, offering the same gentle darkness to everyone who is ready to rest now. And this is the strange kindness of mythic time. It does not ask you to hurry. It stretches, it softens. It invites the mind to step away from the tight little measurements of modern life. And perhaps you can feel the difference. Your day is made of minutes, and minutes are sharp. They cut the day into pieces. They tell you what you should have done by now. But the time of the list is not sharp. It is wide. It is slow. It is the kind of time you feel when you watch clouds moving across the moon and realize the sky is not counting. The scribe knows this too, in a way that is hard to explain. Maybe the scribe has heard older teachers speak of wudl, days that are not counted, days without measure. Or maybe the scribe has simply noticed what you may have noticed as well, that some experiences refuse to be measured accurately. A long grief, a deep love, a night of sleep that heals you more than you expected. These things do not fit neatly into numbers, even when we try. So the list continues like a calm procession. From Bad Tibira, kingship goes to Larak. Larak feels smaller in the mouth, like a word meant to be whispered. Imagine it as a quiet settlement where the wind moves easily between buildings, where the sound of water is always nearby, and where the night sky looks especially large because there is so little light to compete with it. On the way there, you might travel by boat. Picture a simple reed boat sliding along a canal. The water makes a soft, repetitive sound against the hull. Shh, shh, shh. The boatman's paddle enters the water without splashing, lifting and dipping like a slow wing. Along the bank, reeds bend and straighten, bending and straightening, as if they are practicing the same breath you are practicing now. If you are listening tonight from a place where noise has followed you all day, let this imagined canal become your quiet companion. Let the water's rhythm soften the corners of your mind. In Larak, there is no need for spectacle. The list does not describe parades or battles. It simply says, kingship was here. And the mind, when it is ready for sleep, finds comfort in that simplicity. Presence, continuity, a pattern held gently. Then kingship goes to Sipar. Sipar is a city associated with light, the sun, the bright eye of day. But tonight we see it under moonlight, and that changes everything. The daytime glare becomes a silver softness, the streets become calmer, the walls look pale and quiet. Even the idea of the sun feels far away, resting somewhere beyond the horizon like a promise that does not need to speak loudly. Imagine standing near Sipar's edge, where the city meets open land. The night wind is cool, and it carries scents that feel both ancient and familiar. Dry grass, damp clay, a faint trace of smoke. Above you, the stars are scattered like seeds, and somewhere in the distance, perhaps, you can hear a temple bell or a soft chant, not dramatic, not urgent, just a human voice reminding itself that it belongs to something larger. This is how the list works when you let it. It becomes a map of moods. Eridu, water beneath. Bad Tibira, work at rest. Larak, wind and hush. Sipar, light softened into silver. And now slowly we approach Shurupak. Shurupak sits near water again, close to the place where the list will one day write its small, heavy line. The city feels like the last lantern before a doorway. Not frightening, just significant, like the pause before you turn a page. The scribe's hand slows just a little, as if feeling the weight of what comes next. The reed stylus presses the last wedge of a name, then lifts. The lamp flame flickers once, and dust falls through its light. Outside the archive, the Abzu continues its imagined murmur beneath the earth. Water, moving in darkness, steady, unbothered. And perhaps that is the quiet lesson already forming, that beneath the surface of history, beneath kings and lists and changes, there is something that continues, something that does not panic, something that flows. If you are carrying worries tonight, you don't have to fight them. You don't have to solve them. You can place them down for a little while. The way the old texts imagine kingship being placed down, carefully, gently, without shame. Just for now, in a moment, we will reach the edge of the tablet where the boundary line lives, the line the scribe writes with unusual simplicity. But before we touch it, we will linger in Shurupak's calm, listening to the water, watching the lamp, and letting the mind become quiet enough to receive a soft discovery. In Shurupak, the night feels especially still, as if the city is listening to its own river. The air is cool and lightly damp, carrying the scent of mud, reeds, and a faint sweetness from date palms standing somewhere beyond the walls. A few lamps glow in doorways, small pools of amber that do not push the darkness away, only soften it. If you picture yourself walking here, let your steps be slow. The ground is firm underfoot, smoothed by many evenings like this. You pass a courtyard where a jar of water rests in the shade, and you can almost hear the surface of it settling, making a tiny sound like a sigh. Somewhere, a night bird calls once, then nothing. The quiet returns, unbroken. Shurupak is a city that feels like the edge of a page. Not the end of the book, just the place where a sentence is about to turn into another sentence, where a familiar rhythm is about to become a slightly different rhythm. You don't need to brace for it, you can simply notice it the way you notice a breeze changing direction. Back inside the temple precinct, the archive room holds its calm. The lamp flame is steady, and the dust drifting through its light seems slower now, as if the air itself has decided to rest. The scribe sits close to the tablet, shoulders relaxed. The reed stylus held with a tenderness that looks almost like care for a sleeping child. Tap, press, lift. The list has been moving gently from city to city like a lantern carried across a plain. Names have appeared, and numbers that belong to a kind of time that does not hurry. You may have felt your mind loosen as you listened, because repetition can be a soft place to lie down. The story has not demanded that you solve it. It has only invited you to be near it. And now, at Shurupak, the old tablet reaches the moment the scribes wrote with surprising simplicity. It is not a long explanation, it is not a dramatic flourish, it is a single line pressed into clay with the same patient hand, and yet it changes the feeling of everything that comes after. Then the flood swept over. Let those 5 words sit like a small stone placed gently on the ground, not thrown, not dropped, placed. The tablet does not shout, it does not paint loud pictures, It simply marks a boundary, like a quiet ridgeline on a map. And in the hush after that sentence, you may notice something in yourself. The mind wants to lean in, to ask, to imagine, to chase the edge of the unknown. But tonight, you do not have to chase. You can let the unknown remain soft, held at a distance, the way distant rain can be soothing when you hear it but do not have to walk in it. So we stay with the calm of the text. A great change happened, a turning of seasons in the world's story. A line drawn between one kind of time and another. And right here, the list offers its first gentle discovery, one that feels almost like a lullaby for anyone who has carried too much responsibility. Before the change, kingship was described as something lowered, placed from above into the world, as if order arrived already shaped. After the change, the list continues, but the texture of time shifts. The reigns become smaller. The names feel closer to ordinary life. The cities feel more like places where you can imagine a person waking up, eating bread, walking to a field, returning at dusk. In other words, the story moves from the cosmic to the human. There is something strangely comforting about that, because many of us in modern life feel the opposite pressure, to be cosmic, to be perfect, to carry more than one person should carry. We are asked to manage everything, our calendars, our families, our work, our health, our hopes, like we are supposed to hold the sky up with our hands. But the Sumerian list, in its quiet way, suggests that there was a time imagined as larger than life, and then a time that became more earthly, more measured, more manageable, not worse, just different, like the world learning to breathe in smaller, steadier breaths. In the tablet's next lines, kingship returns in a city called Kish, and you can picture Kish without needing detail. A place where people rebuild their routines, where lamps are lit again, where water is channeled again, where life continues in the ordinary way it always does after change, one careful day after another. Notice how gentle that is. Imagine an early dawn in Kish, when the sky is still a deep blue and the first light is thin and gentle. A woman opens a door and the cool air slips in. Someone warms a flat loaf over a quiet ember. A clay cup is filled and set down, and the sound of it touching the table is small, almost sweet. In a narrow lane, a broom of bundled reeds makes slow circles, drawing yesterday's dust into a tidy line. You can hear a donkey shifting its weight, a soft snort, then stillness again. Life returns to the scale of hands and simple tasks. Time is measured by shadows on a wall, by the steady drip from a jar, by the warmth of a bowl, by the pause between two breaths. And as you listen, you can borrow that scale. One inhale, one exhale, one quiet thought floating away. Nothing to prove, nothing to control, only the simple comfort of being here, held by night, gently. The list does not say that everything was lost. It does not linger on images meant to disturb. It simply continues, because continuing is what humans have always done. The clay record holds that truth without judging it. And here is another soft discovery, almost hidden in grammar. The phrase kingship was lowered treats kingship like an object that can be set down, lowered, placed, set. If that image is true in the mind, then it can become true in your body too, because maybe tonight you can lower something as well. Not in a dramatic way, not with a speech. Simply by letting your shoulders drop, by letting your tongue rest, by letting your forehead smooth, by letting one worry, just one, become slightly less important for the next few minutes. You can imagine placing it down the way a traveler places down a bag at the doorway of a safe house. The traveler doesn't decide the whole future in that moment. The traveler only decides to rest now. The scribe presses another line into clay. Tap, press, lift. The lamp flame leans, then straightens. The Abzu murmurs beneath Eridu in the imagination, and above, the night sky remains wide and steady, still offering its dark calm to anyone willing to receive it. This is where the word Udl begins to matter as a feeling, even if it never appears on the tablet in quite the same way. Udl, days not counted, days without measure. Nights that are not supposed to be productive, moments that are allowed to drift. If your mind keeps trying to count what you did today, count what you should do tomorrow, count what you didn't finish, let the ancient story offer you a different kind of time, a time that does not ask for proof, a time that does not demand a plan, a time that simply holds you. And perhaps the most tender part of the list is this: it treats the shift as part of a rhythm, not a punishment. The world changes and then it continues. Authority returns, but it looks different. Time becomes more human. Life becomes a series of smaller rains, smaller seasons, smaller days. That is how healing often works too. Not by making the past disappear, but by letting the scale become manageable again. By letting your inner world return to something you can carry without strain. By letting your heart be human, not heroic. So as we sit with the 5-word line, let it remain quiet. Let it be a hinge, not a storm. Let it be a doorway you pass through slowly with your breath as your guide. In the next part of our journey, we will follow kingship after the boundary, watching how the list describes a new order, shorter spans, closer names, a world that feels more like the one you know. And we will do it without rushing, letting each line become a soft step. For now, stay in the lamplight a moment longer. Feel the warmth of it on your hands. Hear the imagined water under the earth. And if tonight's story reminded you of a beautiful memory, feel free to share it below. Only when you're ready, only if it feels gentle. Let us step through that quiet boundary line as if we are crossing a shallow stream. Not rushing, not splashing, just placing one foot, then the other on stones that feel steady beneath you. The night does not change its mood. The lamp still burns. The reed still presses into clay. Only the texture of time shifts, subtle as a breeze turning. After the flood swept over, the old list continues with a calm insistence. Life goes on, and order returns but it returns in a different size. Kingship, the tablet says, was in Kish. Even if you have never seen Kish, you can picture it tonight in the softest way. A city waking slowly at the edge of water. A low horizon, mud brick walls that hold the cool of the night, narrow lanes that curve like quiet thoughts, a few lamps still glowing as dawn begins to thin the darkness. Imagine the sky above Kish in that in-between hour, neither fully night nor fully day. The stars are fading, but not abruptly. They simply loosen their hold, one by one, like worries that finally decide to rest. The eastern edge of the world grows pale. Birds begin with one small call, then another, as if the morning is remembering how to speak. In a courtyard, someone kneads dough with slow hands. The rhythm is gentle: press, fold, turn. A clay oven holds yesterday's warmth, and when a small fire is coaxed to life, it does not roar, it whispers. A pot is set down, and the sound of it meeting stone is soft and ordinary, exactly the kind of sound that tells the nervous system it is safe. This is the news scale of the story, not cosmic spans that stretch beyond counting, but days you can imagine living inside. The list begins to name kings with reigns that are shorter, closer to human breath. Still long by our standards sometimes, but no longer the vast, dreamlike ages from before. And there is a tender honesty in that change. It is as if the ancient memory is saying, after the great turning, time felt more measured, more earthly, more like the time you and I wake up inside. If you have carried a feeling lately that life is too big, too fast, too demanding, then this shift can feel like a quiet reassurance. Not everything must be endless, not everything must be heroic. Some seasons are meant to be lived one morning at a time. And notice how gently the list treats kingship now. It does not describe it as a prize, it does not paint it as a weapon. It simply places it in a city like a lamp set on a table. Here, in Kish, the pattern of order is present again. You may imagine that pattern as something you can see only by its effects. People know when order is present because the canals are cleared, the grain is stored, the disputes are soothed, the festivals happen on time, the children sleep without fear. Order is not loud. When it works, it is often invisible, like the Abzu beneath Eridu, felt as a steadiness more than seen as a spectacle. And perhaps that is why the scribe's tone remains calm. The tablet is not trying to excite you, it is trying to remind you. It is preserving a sense of continuity. Even when the world changes, something returns. The human impulse to arrange life into a livable rhythm does not disappear. In the archive room, the scribe pauses to smooth the clay's surface with a thumb, making space for the next line. The lamp flame trembles once, then steadies. Dust continues its slow descent. Outside, the temple walls hold the night like a bowl holds water. You may notice that your own breathing has begun to match these small motions. In and out, steady and unforced. If your mind tries to leap ahead, tries to anticipate what the list will say, what it means, what scholars argue, let it come back to the simplest truth. Tonight you are safe and you are allowed to rest. The kings after the boundary do not need to be memorized. Think of them as silhouettes passing in the distance, each carrying the same quiet mantle, each doing what humans do, trying to keep life from spilling into chaos. The list is not praising them with bright adjectives. It is merely keeping track, like a person marking seasons on a wall. And as the list continues, you can feel the story offering a second, deeper, soft discovery. If kingship was once imagined as something lowered from above, then after the turning, kingship begins to look like something humans maintain from within. That is not a loss. It is a maturation. It is the world becoming more intimate. There is a comfort in intimacy. Cosmic order can feel distant, like a star you admire but cannot touch. Human order is closer. It is in hands and habits, in the way a community gathers water, shares bread, listens, forgives, tries again. Imagine the morning in Kish growing a little brighter. A man steps into the street carrying a small basket. A neighbor nods without words. Two children run a short distance, then slow, their bare feet making tiny sounds on packed earth. A woman lifts a jar, adjusting its weight against her hip, and her posture is the posture of a person who has learned how to carry what must be carried without resentment. And maybe that image touches something in you. Because modern life asks you to carry many jars, responsibilities, emotions, unanswered messages, long plans. Sometimes the burden is not the weight itself, but the way we tense against it, the way we try to hold everything at once in the air without setting anything down. So let the old Sumerian image return again, quiet and physical, lowered. If kingship could be lowered, then perhaps your shoulders can be lowered. Perhaps your expectations can be lowered for one night. Perhaps your need to solve tomorrow can be lowered, placed gently on the ground beside your bed, where it can wait without judging you. Take a slow breath and imagine doing that now. Inhale and notice what you are holding. exhale, and set one small thing down, just one. The list continues, and the cities it names after Kish feel more familiar in their humanity. They are places where markets happen, where people disagree and then make peace, where elders tell stories, where children learn to shape clay with their hands. In this portion of the list, the mythic and the practical begin to overlap. The divine is no longer only above. It is also in routine, in repetition, in the slow work of keeping a community alive. This is where the story begins to echo your own life, especially if you are listening from a busy American evening, the kind where you've given your attention away all day, and now you are trying to gather it back. The ancient list does not demand that you become extraordinary. It simply shows you that human beings have always tried to live inside time with gentleness. They have always tried to turn worry into structure and structure into peace. And now, as the scribe presses the next lines, the room feels like a cradle made of shadow and warm light. The Abzu, imagined or not, remains a soothing thought, something steady beneath you. The temple walls remain a boundary. Outside is the world. Inside is quiet. The tablet itself becomes a promise. Memory can be held without noise. Listen for the gentlest sound in this scene, the reed pen, the tiny hiss of the lamp, the imagined water below the city. None of it is trying to impress you. It is simply doing what it does, and that, quietly, is the lesson of the post-flood world. Order is not a thunderclap, it is a habit. It is bread warming, a jar filled, a street swept, a kind word chosen. When your mind feels scattered, you do not need to fix the whole universe. You only need one small, human act of steadiness, one slow exhale, one softened shoulder, one thought set down, like a hand resting on your heart tonight. If you'd like, notice where you're listening from, and let that place be safe enough. Here, no one rests alone. We rest together, gently, in the dark. In the next part of our journey, we will linger a little longer in this post-boundary world, watching how kingship travels again, how the list keeps its calm rhythm, and how that rhythm can become a gentle guide for anyone who is learning to rest. For now, let Kish remain in your mind like a soft dawn, pale light, cool air, bread warming, water settling in jars, and a quiet sense that life, even after change, can find its steady pattern again. The morning in Kish has risen, and it still carries the softness of early light. The streets are awake without being loud. A thin veil of cooking smoke climbs from a few rooftops and dissolves into the pale sky. Water is poured from one clay jar to another with the calm precision of someone who has done it 1,000 times. You can almost hear the small, familiar sounds that tell the body it belongs. A broom brushing dust into a neat line, a wooden door settling back into its frame, the soft knock of a clay cup meeting a table. And somewhere, behind walls that still hold the cool of the night, the scribe is working again. Not as a figure of importance, but as a steady presence, someone who keeps the thread from snapping. In the old world before the boundary line, the list felt like a river of mythic time. After the boundary, it feels like a ledger of ordinary mornings, and there is a kind of comfort in that, especially if your life has been full of big feelings lately. The story doesn't ask you to become bigger, it asks you to become simpler. In the archive, the lamp burns even in daytime because the room is dim and the tablets need care. The flame is small and patient. The reed pen presses its wedges into clay, tap, press, lift, like a heartbeat you can borrow. Dust drifts through the warm circle of light and lands gently, as if the air itself is practicing gentleness. The list continues, and kingship moves again. It travels as if it is not a crown on a head, but a pattern that visits cities like a season. It arrives, it stays, it leaves, and yet the world remains. The more you listen, the more kingship begins to feel like something quieter than power. It begins to feel like a shared agreement to keep life gentle enough to live. This is the soft discovery that grows here in the post-boundary part of the tale. Authority, in its healthiest form, is not a raised voice. It is a lowered weight. When you think of the phrase, kingship was lowered, you might imagine a heavy object being set down carefully. But you can also imagine a different motion, something inside a person being lowered too, the shoulders dropping, the chest softening, the need to grip easing. The list's language becomes an invitation. What if the most stabilizing act is not to tighten control, but to place something down? In Kish, daily life offers 100 small examples. A worker finishes repairing a canal gate and steps back, not to admire himself, but simply to let the water flow in the right direction. A merchant weighs grain, not with drama, but with care, so no one feels cheated. A mother adjusts the blanket over a sleeping child, and the child's breathing stays steady. An elder hears a disagreement and speaks slowly, choosing words that do not set sparks in dry air. These are not heroic scenes, they are ordinary, and that is why they soothe. You may be listening tonight with a mind that has been asked to perform all day, decide, respond, optimize, manage. If so, let this story remind you that a good life is often built from quiet offices, the office of listening, the office of tending, the office of returning things to their place. In the Sumerian imagination, kingship after the flood becomes more like an office than a cosmic marvel, still meaningful, still serious, but closer to earth. It is as if the story is saying, after the Great Change, people learned to carry order in their hands. Not perfectly, not endlessly, just as best they could. And that phrase, as best they could, is one of the gentlest sentences you can offer yourself, because maybe you too have been doing that. Maybe you have been governing your life as best you can. You have been steadying what can be steadied and letting the rest pass. You have been showing up even when you are tired. You have been trying to keep the lamp lit even when the wind has been strong. So let the ancient list become a mirror in soft light. The scribe's tablet does not judge the world for changing. It does not blame the human scale for being smaller than the mythic one. It simply records the transition like a person noticing the seasons. The days shorten, the nights deepen, then slowly light returns. And as kingship moves from Kish to other cities, the journey can become a quiet walk in your imagination. Picture a canal at late afternoon. The sun is low and warm. The water's surface reflects the sky in trembling gold. Reeds sway, and their tips catch light like tiny sparks. A slow-moving boat passes, and the wake spreads outward in soft ripples, widening and smoothing until the surface returns to stillness. If you have a thought that keeps returning tonight, let it be like that wake, a ripple that spreads and fades. You don't have to force it away. You simply let the water do what water does. Now picture the fields beyond the canal. They are flat, patient, newly tended. The earth holds moisture, dark and rich. Rows have been drawn with care, not perfect, but consistent. The air smells of damp soil and distant smoke. Somewhere, a bird settles into a palm tree. The world feels arranged enough. That feeling arranged enough is another gift. Modern life can make you believe that everything must be arranged perfectly, and that if it is not, you have failed. But the ancient landscape teaches a different truth. What matters is the steady attempt. A canal kept clear, a jar kept full, a lamp kept burning. And when you look at those simple acts, you begin to sense something else beneath the story. The deep order was never only up there, it was also down here. Perhaps the Abzu, the imagined sweetwater ocean under Eridu, is not only a myth about geography, perhaps it is also a myth about the mind. A reminder that beneath your surface thoughts, beneath the lists and alarms and messages, there is a quieter layer, a hidden reservoir of steadiness you can return to. You don't have to dig for it with effort. You can reach it with gentleness. Try it now if you like. Let your breathing slow. Feel the weight of your body supported. Notice the place where you are resting and imagine beneath the floor a calm current moving, steady, unhurried, reliable. That is your Abzu tonight. In the archive room, the scribe continues to press the wedges. The clay takes the marks with acceptance. The lamp flame leans when the air shifts, then straightens again, as if practicing resilience without strain. Sometimes the scribe reads what has been written, not loudly, not to impress anyone, just to hear the rhythm and confirm the order. The names come first, then the numbers, and the numbers are spoken the way you might count breaths, slowly, with space between each phrase. In that spaciousness, the mind stops clenching around meaning. It simply floats, and you may even imagine a word that belongs to this gentler sense of time, Uddle, the days that do not ask to be counted. If your thoughts begin to measure everything, how long it takes, how far you've fallen behind, let the scribe's slow voice remind you, tonight is not for counting, tonight is for resting. And here, quietly, we arrive at a deeper, soft discovery, one that does not need to be proved, only felt. If kingship could be lowered from heaven, then you can lower your own kingship too. Not your dignity, not your value, only the inner ruler that insists on controlling everything. And the part of you that tries to manage the future like it is a stack of tablets you must carry at once. Tonight, you can set that stack down. You can let tomorrow wait at the edge of the room, like a city beyond the horizon. You can let your mind stop patrolling. You can let your heart be human, limited, tender, and still worthy of rest. In the ancient list after the flood, time becomes smaller and more livable. Let that be true for you too. Let the next hour be smaller. Let the next breath be enough. And when the story continues, it will not become louder. It will not rush toward conflict. It will remain what it has been, a slow walk through memory, guided by the gentle hand of a scribe and the steady hush of water. Soon, we will return again to the phrase that started this whole journey. Kingship was lowered, and we will let it bloom into a quiet philosophy for the night, that the most healing act is often the simplest one, to place down what you have been carrying and to let yourself be held. The day in Kish has moved forward, and now the light is soft again, leaning toward evening. The sun is lower, warmer, and the shadows stretch across the packed earth like long, quiet thoughts. Inside the temple precinct, the archive remains dim, protected from glare and heat. It is the kind of room where the outside world feels far away. The oil lamp is still burning, even now, because its circle of amber light makes the clay easier to read. The flame is patient, and when you watch it long enough, your own attention becomes patient too. The scribe has turned the tablet slightly, as if finding the most comfortable angle for the next lines. The reed stylus rests in the scribe's fingers like a small, familiar tool. Tap, press, lift. Each motion is steady, each motion is a soft reminder that lasting things are often made quietly. You may notice, as the story continues, that the list is not only a list, it is also a way of teaching the mind to move slowly. A name, a city, a span of time, then another. The rhythm is gentle enough that the nervous system begins to trust it. And now, in this part of our journey, the tablet invites us back to the image that started everything, the image that feels like a hand resting on your shoulder in the dark. Kingship was lowered. If you say that phrase silently, you can feel how physical it is. Lowered implies gravity. It implies care. It implies a deliberate act that ends with something resting. It is not the language of grabbing or forcing, it is the language of placing. Imagine for a moment that you are holding something heavy, not a stone, not a tool, but a bundle made of invisible things, responsibilities, unfinished conversations, plans, expectations, small fears, and the soft pressure to be on all the time. The bundle sits in your arms and asks you to keep carrying it as if letting it go would mean everything falls apart. Now imagine you have reached a table that is strong and steady. The table is wide enough. It does not wobble. It is waiting. You lower the bundle onto it slowly. You don't throw it down, you simply lower it until your arms are empty and the weight is no longer inside your muscles. Feel the difference. That is what the Sumerian phrase offers, a picture of relief that does not require drama. A weight can be set down, order can be placed. You do not have to hold everything in the air. In the old list, kingship moves through cities, but it moves like a calm object being carried, not like a prize being fought over. The story does not fill itself with noise. It treats authority as a kind of presence, something that sits, steadies, and allows life to continue. And that idea, authority as presence, can be quietly healing, because many people today carry an inner voice that never sleeps. It checks, it counts, it judges, it says, you should be doing more. It says, you are behind. That voice can keep the body awake even when the room is quiet. But what if that inner ruler could be lowered too? Not silenced harshly, not defeated, just invited to rest, just placed gently on a shelf for the night, like a tool that has done enough work for one day. The lamp flame leans slightly as the air shifts, then straightens. The scribe dips the reed into water and lifts it again. A tiny bead clings to the tip, bright for a moment in the lamplight, then absorbed into clay when the next wedge is pressed. Tap, press, lift. Outside you can imagine the Abzu beneath the earth, fresh water in darkness, moving without urgency. It does not try to prove itself. It simply supports life. It is there whether anyone is watching or not. And perhaps that too is a form of kingship. Quiet support, not loud command. If your thoughts are the surface, rippling, reflecting, changing, then the Abzu is the depth that stays calm. It is the steady part of you that continues even when your day is messy. Even when you are tired, try gently to feel that depth now. Let your breath drop a little lower into your body. Let your belly soften on the inhale. Let the exhale be slightly longer than the inhale, as if you are letting air out of a jar slowly, carefully, so it doesn't make noise. In and out, steady. Somewhere outside the archive, evening returns to the city. The heat releases its hold and the air becomes kinder. A canal-side path cools under bare feet. A man rinses his hands in a bowl and watches the water clear. A woman folds a cloth and sets it on a shelf, the way you might set a day aside. In a courtyard, someone lights a second lamp, and the new flame joins the first like a quiet companion. If you listen closely in your imagination, You can hear small sounds that do not demand attention. A ladle touching a pot, a soft laugh that fades quickly, the faint rustle of reeds when the wind passes through. Nothing insists, nothing rushes. It is simply the world easing into night. And perhaps you can ask yourself one gentle question, as if you were checking in with a friend. What would it feel like to be governed by kindness tonight? Not by strict rules, not by pressure, but by kindness. Kindness that lets you rest, kindness that lets you be unfinished, kindness that trusts tomorrow to arrive on its own, quietly. Now let us return to the archive's shelf where the clay prism rests. Imagine the scribe lifting it carefully with both hands. The prism is not large, but it is dense. Its weight is real, the weight of earth that has been shaped and fired and preserved. The surface is slightly rough, and the wedge marks catch the lamplight like tiny shadows. You turn it slowly, you can feel the edges under your fingertips, cool, firm, honest. This is what memory looks like when it becomes an object. It is clay you can hold. And the fact that it exists at all is a kind of miracle of patience. Someone once pressed these lines and believed they were worth keeping. As you imagine the prism turning, let your own mind turn with it, slowly. A gentle rotation, a soft shift, no sharp angles. On one face, the list speaks of the time before the boundary, when reigns stretch into mythic vastness. On another, it speaks of the time after, when the world becomes more measured. And between them, like a hinge, is that quiet line, then the flood swept over. We will not open that line into vivid images tonight. We will keep it as the tablet keeps it, a pause, a simple acknowledgement that change happens. And there is wisdom in that restraint, because the mind before sleep does not need bright pictures. It needs permission to settle. It needs to feel safe enough to let go. So instead, we let the soft discovery deepen. Some things are meant to be placed down, not carried through the night. If kingship, this ancient symbol of order, could be imagined as something lowered, then you too can lower your burdens. You can place down your need to be perfect. You can place down the belief that resting is irresponsible. You can place down the last conversation you replayed in your head. You can place it down without punishment, just for tonight. And as you do, notice how the stories, how is gentle, not by force, but by rhythm. A lamp flame, a reed pen, the hush of imagined water, a list that repeats without demanding. If you'd like a small ritual, here is one that fits this ancient room. On your next inhale, imagine you are gathering all your loose thoughts into your hands like soft sand. On your exhale, imagine you are letting that sand pour slowly into a bowl beside the lamp. The bowl can hold it. You do not need to hold it in your body. Inhale, gather, exhale, pour. And now, as the scribe sets the prism back on the shelf, the room becomes even quieter. The lamp continues to glow. The dust continues to drift. The Abzu continues its gentle, unseen movement beneath the earth. In the next part of our journey, we will let the idea of presence grow even warmer. How the ancient list quietly suggests that sometimes the greatest power is simply to be here, to breathe, to continue, to rest. For now, stay with the image of the lowered weight. Let it be your own. Let your shoulders be lower, let your jaw be lower, let your thoughts be lower, settling into the deep, sweet water of sleep. The lamp in the archive has been burning for a long while now, and its steady light makes time feel different. Not because time has stopped, but because the room does not participate in hurry. The outside world may measure the day by shadows and schedules. Here, Time is measured by quiet gestures, the turning of a clay prism, the dipping of a reed into water, the slow fall of dust. Tap, press, lift. If you are still listening, let yourself listen the way you listen to rain. You do not need to follow every drop. You simply let the sound become a blanket over the mind. The scribe's breathing is calm. In this dim room, it is possible to imagine the scribe as someone who has learned a certain wisdom that there are days you count and days you do not. And this is where we arrive at a word, more like a feeling than a definition, that belongs perfectly to a sleep story. Uddle. A sense of time that does not demand accounting. Days without measure. Moments that cannot be reduced to a number on a tablet, no matter how careful the scribe is. Even if the exact word is elusive in the records, the idea lives in the texture of the story. The pre-flood rains so vast they move like dreams, the post-flood years more human and countable, and beneath it all a recognition that time has layers. You already know this, in your own way. There is the time of tasks, sharp, linear, impatient. And there is the time of memory, soft, looping, scented, slow. And there is the time of the body, breath, heartbeat, warmth, the small pull towards sleep. And then there is uddle time, the time that happens when you stop insisting on control. Tonight is meant to be udal time. If your mind has been counting all day, you can let it rest from counting now. You can let the minutes dissolve into the larger, kinder atmosphere of night. Imagine stepping outside the archive for a moment. The temple precinct is quiet, and beyond its walls the city has softened into darkness. Somewhere a dog sighs and shifts in its sleep. A lamp in a distant window flickers once, then steadies. The air is cool enough to feel clean in your lungs. Above, the sky is heavy with stars. This is a good sky for forgetting numbers. If you look long enough, the stars begin to feel like they are not separate points, but part of one wide, calm fabric. Your thoughts can be like those stars, small lights scattered across a dark field, each one there, but none of them urgent. You can let them exist without chasing them. If a thought appears about tomorrow, about a conversation, about something unfinished, imagine it as a star. Notice it, and then let it stay where it is without grabbing it. The sky can hold it. You don't have to. Now let us walk again, gently, through the landscape the list implies. The southern land of Sumer at night is a place of water and wide horizons. Canals reflect the moon. Reeds sway. The wind moves across flat earth with no obstacles, so its sound is smooth, like a slow exhale. In the distance, you might hear a frog call once, then silence. That silence is not empty. It is full of space. If you were traveling between cities, Eridu to Bad Tibira, to Larak, to Sipar, to Shurupak, you would travel along water. In a reed boat, perhaps, or on a narrow path beside a canal where the ground is cool and the night air keeps you awake in a pleasant way. But tonight, we travel in the mind, and mind travel is softer. The body stays safe where it is. The imagination moves with no strain. This is the most restful kind of journey, one where you can drift and still arrive. The list, in its calm recitation of rulers and cities, can become something like a lullaby if you allow it. Not because the words are meaningless, but because their meaning is carried by rhythm rather than urgency. Think of the way a parent might hum a tune without lyrics. The hum is not trying to teach facts, it is trying to soothe. The Sumerian list, read slowly, does something similar. It gives the mind a gentle structure to float on, and in that floating, udal becomes real. Days without measure. How many times have you wished for that? Even if you have never used that phrase. How many times have you wanted one night where you don't have to track anything, optimize anything, explain anything? Tonight, let yourself have that. Back in the archive, the scribe's tablet holds the boundary line quietly. Then the flood swept over, and then Kish, and then the more human order. The story's shape is not frightening, it is seasonal. A long dreamlike era, then a turning, then a return to smaller rhythms. That shape mirrors your own life in a soft way. There are times when your days feel enormous, stretched, full, too big to hold. And then something changes, a season ends, a chapter closes, a realization arrives. Not as a shock, but as a quiet understanding. And after that, life becomes more manageable again. Not perfect, not painless, but livable. The list doesn't say be strong. It simply shows continue. And continuing, when done gently, is a form of grace. Now imagine the Abzu again, the deep, sweet water under Eridu. Imagine it as the source of all the little canals and rivers you see on the surface. That is how your deeper calm works too. It doesn't always show itself on the surface, but it can feed the surface when you stop blocking it with constant counting. So here is a small, soothing exercise that fits perfectly in the world of Udili. On your next inhale, imagine you are drawing up cool, fresh water from the Abzu into your chest. Not literally, just as a picture. Let that water feel like calm. On your exhale, imagine that calm flowing outward through your shoulders, arms, and hands, loosening whatever you have been gripping. Inhale, cool water rising. Exhale, calm flowing outward. Do that once more, slower. Inhale, exhale. Now in the dim archive, the scribe pauses as if listening to the quiet. The reed pen rests, the lamp flame makes a tiny sound, almost nothing. The clay tablet, still slightly damp, holds the marks patiently. And you may notice something when the writing stops, the room does not become empty, it becomes even fuller of calm. That is Udil too, the space between actions, the pause that doesn't need to be filled. In modern life, pauses can feel uncomfortable because they give the mind room to race. But in this ancient room, pauses are safe. They are expected. They are part of the rhythm. So let your own pauses be safe tonight. If you find yourself between thoughts, don't rush to fill the gap. Let the gap be a soft cushion. Let it hold you. Now, we are nearing the end of our gentle journey where the story's philosophy becomes clear in the simplest possible way. If kingship once was lowered from heaven, then perhaps you can lower your worries now. You can place them down, not forever, not as a dramatic decision, but as an act of kindness. In the next and final part, we will return fully to the lamplight and let the story close like a slow, warm curtain, bringing you back to the quiet room, to the tablet resting, to the Abzu murmuring beneath, and to the gentle truth that you are allowed to rest. For now, stay with Udil, stay with unmeasured time. Let the night carry you without asking you to count your steps. The night has deepened again, the way it naturally does when you stop watching the clock. Outside the temple walls, the world is quiet enough that even small sounds feel gentle. The faint rustle of reeds, the distant shift of water in a canal, the occasional hush of wind moving across flat land. In the archive, the lamp still burns, and its circle of light is small. Small enough to feel intimate, large enough to hold everything we need tonight. The tablet rests on the table now, and the scribe has set the reed stylus down beside it, as if saying, the work is done for now. The clay has received its marks. The story has been pressed into matter. What remains is the quiet after the writing, the calm that follows when something has been recorded and no longer needs to be carried in the mind alone. If you have been listening for a while, You may feel your thoughts becoming fewer, slower, softer. That's perfect. Let them be like the dust drifting through lamplight, present but not demanding. Let them float down without your help. This part of the journey is not about adding more facts. It is about letting the facts become feeling, letting the ancient idea settle into the body as comfort. Because what have we really been holding tonight? We have been holding a small room of lamplight and clay. We have been holding the imagined hush of the Abzu beneath Eridu. We have been holding a list of kings and cities, not as a lesson to memorize, but as a rhythm to rest upon. We have been holding a boundary line, then the flood swept over, not as a scene of alarm, but as a quiet hinge in the story of time. And we have been holding one phrase that keeps returning like a gentle refrain. Kingship was lowered. At this point, you may notice that the phrase has changed shape in your mind. Earlier, it may have sounded mysterious, foreign, historical. Now, after traveling through this calm landscape, it may feel personal, like a picture of your own ability to set something down. If you want to feel it more clearly, imagine the last moments of a long day in an ancient house. A person enters a courtyard with a jar on their shoulder. They move slowly because the jar is heavy and because the day has already asked for enough effort. They lower the jar onto a stone stand, carefully so it doesn't crack, carefully so the water doesn't spill. When the weight leaves their body, their shoulders lift without trying. Their breath deepens without permission being asked. The jar is now held by the stand, not by the person. This is a simple act. It is not impressive. It is not dramatic, but it is deeply human and deeply restful. And that is what lowered means. We have a tendency, especially in modern life, to carry things long past the point when carrying is useful. We carry yesterday's mistake. We carry tomorrow's fear. We carry imaginary conversations. We carry the idea that we must stay alert even when the room is safe. Our minds keep the jar on the shoulder long after we have reached home, but the ancient image offers another option. Set it down, not forever, not as a grand gesture, just as a nightly practice. And notice something else. In the Sumerian imagination, kingship was not created in a rush. It was placed. It was lowered. It arrived as an order that could be received. The story suggests a world where order is not only something you force into existence, sometimes it is something you allow. That is a soothing philosophy for sleep, because sleep is like that too. You can't force it the way you force a task. The more you demand it, the more it retreats. Sleep comes when you allow it, when you soften around it, when you make space. So let this story teach you the art of allowing. Allow your shoulders to be heavy. Allow your eyelids to be heavy. Allow your thoughts to become less important. Allow the night to hold you. Back in the archive, the scribe gently wraps the prism in cloth, as if tucking it in. The cloth is coarse but clean. It smells faintly of clay and reed. The prism disappears into the fold, and the fold is tied with a simple cord. The act feels tender, like caring for something that deserves rest. Then the scribe places the wrapped prism on a shelf among other quiet objects, each one holding a piece of memory. The shelf creaks softly, an old sound, familiar, not alarming. Dust settles. The lamp flame continues to burn, as if it doesn't mind being the only awake thing in the room. Outside, the Abzu murmurs beneath the earth in imagination, fresh water in darkness, steady and patient. Whether the ancient people believed it literally or symbolically, it doesn't matter for tonight. What matters is the feeling. Beneath the surface of life, there is a steadiness you can trust. If you are listening from a busy city, imagine the Abzu beneath your own home, beneath concrete, beneath pipes, beneath streets. Not literally a Sumerian ocean, but a quiet layer of calm. The deeper you go, the quieter it gets, and your body knows how to go there. It goes there when you stop insisting and start allowing. This is why the story avoids conflict. Not because history lacks it, but because tonight's purpose is different. Tonight, we are not here to heighten the mind. We are here to soften it. We are here to turn knowledge into a gentle companion, a warm lamp, a slow river. And now there is one more soft discovery to offer. As we move toward the end, the ancient list treats time like a living thing that changes its pace. Before the boundary, time is vast, dreamy, uncountable. After the boundary, time becomes smaller, human, measurable. And in both, the list continues without panic. It does not say, "This is wrong." It does not say, "This is failure." It simply adapts. That is what you can do too. If your life used to feel one way, and now it feels another, you are not broken. You are simply in a different rhythm. If you used to move fast, and now you need slow, that is not weakness. That is wisdom. If your energy has changed, if your priorities have changed, if your nights have changed, maybe you are simply crossing a boundary and a new scale of time is arriving. And tonight you can choose the smallest, kindest scale, the scale of breath. Inhale and feel the air arrive. Exhale and feel the body soften. That's enough. If you'd like, place a hand lightly on your chest or stomach, only if it feels comfortable, and feel the gentle rise and fall. This is the simplest kingship you will ever need, the quiet governance of your own breath, keeping you alive, keeping you here, steady and unforced. Here, no one rests alone. Every story from the past is a soft lantern in the dark, gently lighting our way tonight. And if this story brought you calm, leave a gentle comment for yourself. Only when you're ready, only if it feels like kindness. You don't have to write anything clever. Even a single word is enough. Rest. Soft. Here. Thank you. Now we are close to the end. The lamp will soon be lowered too, its flame dimming, not suddenly but slowly, until the room is held by darkness again. The scribe will leave without noise. The tablets will rest on their shelves. The Abzu will continue its invisible murmur, and you will be free to drift. In the next and final part, we will close the story the way the night closes around a tired mind, gently, with one last breath, one last image, one last permission to set everything down. The archive room is quieter now than it has been all night. The writing has ended. The tablet is no longer being turned or pressed. The reed stylus rests beside a small bowl of water, its tip darkened with clay. The air smells faintly of warm oil and earth, like a garden after dusk. The lamp still burns, but the flame is smaller, as if it too is growing sleepy. If you imagine the scene, you may notice how gentle everything is when nothing is being demanded. The shelves stand in shadow, holding their wrapped prisms and tablets like a library of dreams. Dust drifts down in slow spirals. Outside the walls, the wind has softened. Even the reeds seem to move with less insistence. Tonight's story has traveled far, without ever hurrying. From Eridu and its imagined deep sweet water, through the moonlit stations of other cities, to Shurupak and the quiet boundary line, and onward to Kish and the more human shape of time. We have carried names and numbers, not like burdens, but like soft footsteps. We have let the idea of Udal, unmeasured time, wash over the mind like a slow river. And now, as the story comes to rest, we return to the simplest, kindest truth it offered again and again. If kingship was lowered, then you can lower what you've been carrying, not as a grand statement, not as a dramatic vow, just as a nightly act of mercy. Imagine, for a moment, the phrase becoming physical. Picture a heavy object wrapped in cloth, something precious but tiring to hold. You have carried it all day, perhaps without realizing how much tension it asked from your arms and shoulders. Now you step into a quiet room. A table waits, steady and strong. You lean forward slowly and lower the bundle onto the table. You feel the weight leave your body. Your shoulders release. Your breath deepens. You don't need to decide what happens next. The only thing that matters is that you are no longer holding it in the air. Let that be your body's lesson tonight. Lower your shoulders. Lower your jaw. Lower your tongue away from the roof of your mouth. Lower your thoughts, letting them sink like stones into deep water where they can rest. If you'd like, take one slow inhale. And on the exhale, imagine placing down one worry, just one, not forever, just for now. In the lamplight, the scribe stands. The movement is quiet, careful, respectful of the sleeping world. The scribe lifts the lamp with both hands and walks toward a doorway. The flame wavers slightly, then steadies, protected by the lamp's small walls. At the threshold, the scribe pauses and looks back once, not with drama, but with tenderness, at the shelves of clay memory, at the tablet on the table, at the room that has held so much time without rushing. Then the scribe steps out, and the door closes softly. The archive is now held by darkness, and in the darkness, nothing is lost. The tablets remain, the memory remains. The Abzu remains in the imagination, murmuring beneath the earth like a gentle promise. Something steady continues even when you stop watching. That is the final soft discovery of the night. You do not need to stay awake to keep the world in order. The world has its own rhythms. Water flows, wind moves, night deepens, morning arrives. Your body breathes, your heart beats. Even when you sleep, the deepest parts of life continue without your management. So you can rest. If your mind tries to protest, tries to rehearse tomorrow, let it hear the ancient phrase one last time, like a lullaby spoken in the dark. Kingship was lowered. And then gently let your own inner kingship be lowered too. Let the part of you that keeps watch, that stays tense, that tries to control, step back for the night. Thank it for its effort. Then set it down as if placing a tool on a shelf. You have done enough. Now let the closing images come softly, like a slow curtain falling. A moonlit canal outside Eridu, the water carrying silver light. Reeds swaying in a breeze that does not hurry. A temple wall warm from the day, cooling into night. A clay tablet resting on a shelf, safe and quiet. A lamp flame shrinking into a small, steady ember, then dimming without a sound. And beneath everything, the imagined Abzu, deep, sweet water in darkness, moving steadily, kindly, endlessly. Let your breathing match that hidden water. Inhale, slow and easy. Exhale, longer, softer. Inhale, exhale. If tonight's story reminded you of a beautiful memory, feel free to share it below, only when you're ready. Your presence adds warmth to this quiet corner of the night. And if this story brought you calm, leave a gentle comment for yourself. Don't forget to subscribe for more peaceful nighttime journeys. Now, you don't need to listen closely anymore. You don't need to follow the words. Let them become background, like wind in reeds, like water in a canal, like the last glow of a lamp behind a closed door. Wherever you are, on a couch, in a bed, under a blanket, let your body sink into comfort. Let your thoughts drift away like distant stars fading into morning. And if kingship once was lowered, then tonight you can lower your worries too. Good night.